Hey everyone, before we jump into today's chapter, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you'll never miss a new audio fic. Your support really helps keep these stories coming. Now, let's dive in. The briefing room, SGC, 40 minutes later. The briefing room was silent as SG-1, minus O'Neill, sat at the conference table. It had taken about 20 minutes to complete the post-mission checks. The medical personnel were clearly distraught, though doing their best to hide it. For the first time, no one spoke. No one joked. SG-1 simply completed the checkups and were then ordered to meet in the briefing room. As for Willow, she had been doing everything she could to hold herself together. Not only did she have her own emotions to deal with after this tragedy, she could sense everyone else's as well. So, she was being slammed with anger and grief from all sides. She could feel herself at the edge. Willow was doing everything she could to calm herself. In the meantime, the interviews for the documentary had been abruptly halted, leaving the director scrambling to figure out what had happened off-world. No one was talking. Still, rumors began to circulate, whispers that O'Neill didn't make it. Back in the briefing room, it was General Hammond who finally broke the silence. "Welcome back, SG-1, he said, looking at each of them before fixing his gaze on the tabletop. He took in a deep breath, then asked, "What happened out there?" His voice wasn't harsh, more inquisitive, though tinged with disbelief. Carter spoke first, followed by Daniel, who explained that one of the Jaffa had gotten off a shot at the end. Silence settled over the table again. The only sound was a low hum of the air conditioners. Willow wasn't sure if she should speak up about the strange power she felt after witnessing Fraiser being shot. Would they blame her for not saving her? She fiddled with her thumbs until Daniel quietly said, "There was nothing anyone could do." Willow looked up. Daniel was giving her a reassuring glance before turning back toward Carter, who had just wiped her left eye. He was right. She knew it. Even with magic, raising the dead was not truly possible. Well, it was possible, but whatever came back wouldn't be the same. A zombie, perhaps. That was at least one possibility. Teal'c then described what happened next, including the Jaffa's sudden, intense pain. Even he seemed to struggle with the words, though he pressed on in his usual stoic manner. Carter added that the Alkesh had crashed into the ground and that it had been Willow's doing, an act that had allowed them to escape without further injuries. Hammond turned to Willow. "Explain." She hesitated. "All I know is, it didn't feel like magic. I just imagined crushing their symbiotes and, yeah, the Jaffa died and then the three Alkesh crashed." "It didn't feel like magic?" Carter asked. Willow shook her head, then took a deep breath. The words she feared to say spilled out anyway. "I thought it was magic. I tried to save Dr. Fraiser, but magic can't resurrect the dead." She glanced around the table. "Well, I mean, you could, but they might not be the same as when they were alive. I mean, maybe like zombies." "Yeah." Hammond nodded. "You all did everything you could." He pressed his lips together before adding, "The NID heard about what happened off-world." "About Janet?" Daniel asked. His eyes flipped to Willow, then back to Hammond. "Do they know about what happened with Willow?" Carter leaned forward. "If the NID knew about Willow, they would have come after her by now." The general leaned back in his chair and nodded. Placing his hands flat on the table, he continued, "Speaking of the NID, an official will be arriving within the next 4 hours." Everyone exchanged surprised looks. How had they heard about the mission so quickly? Hammond shook his head. He didn't know either. "He'll be interviewing everyone from SG-1, Hammond went on. He then turned toward Willow and said, "Lieutenant, I leave it up to you whether or not you reveal how you stopped those Jaffa." Willow nodded, but she had already decided. There was no way she would tell the NID anything. Willow's quarters, SGC, an hour later. Even after the tragedy they had just endured, the NID still demanded reports from everyone who had gone off-world. Willow supposed it was standard procedure, but typing it up made her feel dirty. As she finished the report, her thoughts drifted back to trying and failing to heal Fraiser, to the Jaffar's cries of agony, to the crashing Alkesh and everything in between. Leaning back in her chair, she closed her eyes. Daniel had been right. There was nothing she could have done for Fraiser. Deep down, Willow knew this was true, but still. Then there were the persistent requests for her to complete her interview for the documentary. The director hadn't yet been told what had happened off-world, and he seemed desperate to gather information any way he could. From what she had heard, Hammond was far from pleased with the director, Emmett Bregman, for pushing interviews so soon after the mission. With a sigh, Willow sent off her report, rose from her chair, and prepared to meditate. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, she closed her eyes and tried to clear her mind. She focused on her breathing, slow and steady, but the emotions around her kept crashing into her like waves. It was suffocating, an ocean pressing down, waiting for her to break. She clenched her fists. She tried to push back against the tide of emotions, sadness, anger, grief, and countless others. Willow squeezed her eyes shut and whispered, "Stop." It had taken her time to learn how to build a metaphorical wall between her own emotions and those of everyone else on the base. Usually some feelings would slip through, but she could manage them. Now, though, compromised and raw, holding that wall together was almost impossible. Her body tensed, her thoughts scattered and chaotic. At first, Willow barely noticed the tremor, just a faint vibration. Then seconds later, the room began to shake. She snapped her eyes open, heart pounding, a vivid flash of Fraiser's final moments searing her mind, the blast ripping past and throwing her back. Elsewhere, Carter heard a deafening boom as her lab rattled around her. Daniel lunged for the wall, steadying the artifacts and decorations that had nearly crashed to the floor. Teal'c rose from his meditation pose, stepping back as the closet doors rattled violently. From the gate room to the observation deck, the entire mountain shook. "Since when are there earthquakes in Colorado?" someone shouted, struggling to stay upright. The film crew scrambled under a table for cover. Across the base, chaos spread as personnel staggered, bracing themselves against the shaking walls. In her quarters, Willow sat rigid, fists clenched, body thrumming with power. But it wasn't magic. She would have felt it if it were. All she could hear was the hammering of her own heart as she fought to steady her breathing. Slowly, with effort, she forced her fingers to unclench. The tremor began to ease, fading as her pulse calmed. 2 long minutes later, the shaking finally ceased. Willow's forehead was damp with sweat. What just happened? She glanced around her room. Her bookshelf had shifted, tilting at an angle. The table no longer sat flush against the wall. She swallowed hard, unsettled. The rush of power she felt left no doubt in her mind. She was responsible for the tremor. But how? And why? Especially since she hadn't used magic at all. Isolation Room 3, SGC. Willow didn't tell anyone what had happened in her quarters a few hours earlier. Everyone assumed it was just a freak quake, though Willow could still sense both sadness and fear all around her. The geological department was already investigating, especially since the tremors had been felt inside the mountain, but not in the surrounding area or in Colorado Springs. In the meantime, Willow stepped into Isolation Room 3. It was her turn to be interviewed by a man from the NID. "Hello, Lieutenant Rosenberg. My name is Richard Woolsey," the bald man said. "Do you know why I'm here?" "You're here because of what happened off-world," Willow replied, keeping her expression carefully neutral. She sat down across from him. "What happened earlier today was a tragedy," Woolsey agreed. He turned on the digital recorder, opened a folder, and leaned forward. "I think General Hammond made the wrong choice in sending backup into an obvious ambush. Don't you think?" Willow pressed her lips together. A few choice words came to mind, but saying them would have been unprofessional. Instead, she said calmly, "We were sent as backup to save SG-13, which we did. If we hadn't gone, the team would have been captured. Or worse. Woolsey studied her for several seconds, perhaps hoping she would elaborate. When she didn't, he nodded and made a note in the folder. "Young lady," he said, leaning back in his chair, "the death of Dr. Fraiser was a direct result of returning to that planet. For that, General Hammond must take full responsibility. Even you should see that." Willow forced herself to remain composed. She could feel anger radiating from Woolsey, though she wasn't sure why. Was it because she wasn't giving him the answers he wanted? Because of Dr. Fraiser's death? Or something else entirely? After a moment, she simply said, "It's not right to blame General Hammond for what happened off-world. It just happened." Woolsey frowned. "And tell me about what happened to the Jaffa on P3X666. From the reports, they suddenly doubled over in pain and died. Any explanations? Maybe they ate something that didn't agree with them?" Willow suggested lightly. "You know what happened, don't you? What would the others I interviewed today say?" Woolsey pressed. "If you have anything to add, now would be the time." "Everything I know is in the report I submitted," Willow replied. She glanced toward the exit before looking back at him. "I don't know what else to tell you." He didn't look convinced. Willow held her breath until, at last, Woolsey gave a curt nod and told her she was excused. She stood, nodded once, and walked out. The SGC felt heavy with grief. Dr. Fraiser's death, the NID inquiry, and the presence of a television crew. It all felt like a powder keg ready to explode. Willow wanted to talk to someone about what had happened, but everyone was mourning in their own way. Teal'c was meditating, and she didn't want to disturb him. Major Carter, who had already endured her interview with Woolsey, had gone with General Hammond to break the news to Cassie. "Oh God, Cassie," Willow whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "I hope you'll be all right." Infirmary, SGC. After the interview with Woolsey, Willow wandered through the corridors in a daze. She wasn't entirely sure how she got there. She might have even taken the elevator without realizing it, but eventually found herself at the infirmary. Pushing through the double doors, she saw Dr. Brightman, who had been second in line to Dr. Fraiser and now the interim chief medical officer, sitting at Fraiser's desk. For a brief moment, Willow thought she saw Fraiser herself there. She blinked, shook her head, and once again it was Dr. Brightman. "Lieutenant," Dr. Brightman said with concern as she looked up, "are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine," Willow replied, slipping her hands into her pockets. "Has Colonel O'Neill woken up yet?" "Not yet," Dr. Brightman answered. "He's stable and should be up by tomorrow. His vest insert absorbed most of the blast, but he still suffered some minor burns." "Could I sit with him for a while?" Willow asked. "Of course," Brightman said with a small nod. "But please, no more than 30 minutes. You both need a rest." "Yes, ma'am." Willow crossed the room to where Colonel O'Neill lay asleep, sedated by the pain medication he'd been given for his injuries. His burns were hidden between layers of sterile white gauze that peeked out from under his shirt. She pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. "Hi, Colonel," she said softly. "I don't know if you can hear me. You're asleep and all." She gave a faint smile and settled into silence beside him. A few minutes later, Daniel slipped quietly through the infirmary doors. Willow glanced up, offering him a quick smile before watching him drag a chair over to sit next to her. Neither of them spoke. They simply sat there together, keeping watch over the unconscious colonel. Memorial Service, SGC Gate Room. Willow stood at attention alongside the rest of SG-1 and any other personnel during Fraiser's memorial service. Teal'c had helped Major Carter write a moving tribute that captured the impact Fraiser had made on the lives of everyone at the SGC. Willow glanced over at Cassandra Fraiser, who was standing a few steps away. The girl had cried through the night, and only the steady presence of Major Carter and General Hammond had given her any comfort. Earlier, in the locker room, as they changed into their blue dress uniforms, Carter had told Willow that Cassie would be staying with her from now on. Willow reminded herself that she should make a point of talking with Cassie today if possible. As she looked around the gate room, Willow noticed television cameras were present. Carter had mentioned that Hammond had agreed to let the crew finish their project, and he was even looking forward to viewing the tape before it was sealed away as classified until the right time came. A few minutes later, the service ended. People began to mingle quietly, speaking in hushed tones. Most of them made their way toward Cassie to offer their condolences. Willow knew that while today's memorial was for SGC personnel, there would be a private ceremony the following day for Fraiser's friends and family. Willow walked over to join her team, who were waiting for the crowd around Cassie to thin. "Major, Teal'c, that was a beautiful service," she said. Both of them nodded in quiet acknowledgement. Then she turned to O'Neill. "Colonel, I'm glad you're doing well. We were worried there for a second." "Thanks, Red. I'm feeling peachy. Of course, my knees still hurt," O'Neill replied with a faint smile. "Daniel," Willow said with a nod. He patted her shoulder in return. Willow knew her team had many questions about what had happened on P3X666, but for now, those questions would have to wait, mostly because she didn't know them herself. Cassie soon approached, her eyes still tearful, but her lips curved into a small, gentle smile. "Uncle Jack, Sam, Daniel, Teal'c, Willow, thank you for such a beautiful service. I know she would have loved it." They embraced her in return, offering condolences and words of hope. Willow apologized for not being around much and promised to spend more time with her whenever she could. That evening, SG-1 took Cassie out for dinner before parting ways. Willow went home afterward, unaware of the unstoppable changes looming in the near future, changes that would transform her life and her team forever. To be continued.